Good morning, everybody. It is 7 o'clock. Is the party over for the Prime Minister? We would ask the government, but the Minister is not available this morning. The invitation still open if you're watching us at number 10 Downing Street. Morning. But we will be talking to Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner, plus the Conservative MP Tobias Ellwood, plus the former Attorney General Dominic Reeve, plus the SNP leader Ian Blackford, and one Labour MP who has lost multiple family members to COVID. It's Wednesday, the 12th of January. Calls to quit. The Prime Minister under pressure from his own MPs over Partygate as he prepares to face questions in PMQs.
The Prime Minister faces MPs for the first time since a leaked email about a Bring Your Own Booze Downing Street gathering. I'll bring you the very latest.
Unforced error. Novak Djokovic blames his agent for a mistake in his Australian travel declaration as his mother speaks out.
He is a tennis player, he's not politician, he is not a criminal, he is not murderer, he is just tennis player, the best in the world, just let him play.
U-turn, the government puts the brakes on the smart motorway rollout after safety concerns. Gathering dust, the millions of lateral flow tests piled up in a warehouse despite being ready to go. We'll tell you why. The GP who is prepared to lose her job rather than get a COVID vaccine. We'll speak to her at 7:30 about her personal plea that she's made to the PM. Cancelled culture takes a new twist as Elvis Costello cancels himself, saying he'll stop performing his biggest hits, Oliver's Army, of fraud over a dodgy blood test. Today, we'll take a look at what's actually being done in that industry to detect disease. And the woman dressing as different household objects throughout January. This morning asking, is the party over for the Prime Minister following the latest allegations? Boris Johnson will face MPs in the House of Commons at PMQs, with MPs calling for him to resign over so-called Partygate, including from his own political party. He's expected to be asked whether he attended a Bring Your Own Booze drinks party in the Downing Street garden during lockdown. The Prime Minister has repeatedly denied he is a rule breaker. Let's take a look at some of the things that he has said. Here we go. On the 1st of December, Boris Johnson told MPs that all guidance was followed completely. The next day, we asked, he replied, the guidance is there and I am very keen that people understand this. On the 7th, he told the BBC that all guidelines were observed. The following day, after the video of Allegra Stratton, Boris Johnson told MPs, I have been repeatedly assured that rules were not broken. That evening, at a Downing Street briefing, he said, all the evidence I can see, people in this building stayed within the rules. On the 13th of December, the Prime Minister said, I can tell you once again that I certainly broke no rules. On the 20th, after The Guardian revealed that photo of the Downing Street garden, Boris Johnson said, those were people at work, talking about work. I have said what I have to say about that. Here's Kate McCann.
Downing Street, the iconic home of British political power, today at the heart of a row that threatens the man who currently occupies it. After a day of silence, now the reckoning as Boris Johnson attends Prime Minister's questions. His party in mutinous mood.
If he has breached his own guidance, if he has not been truthful, then that is an extremely important issue. And I've said previously, if the Prime Minister has misled Parliament, then he must resign.
Caroline Noakes, a former government minister, said she was very, very sorry for the row, adding in a letter to her constituents, I have no words that can adequately express how angry I am at the don't do as I do as I say attitude that appears to have prevailed in Downing Street. I will not try to explain or excuse, but I will certainly apologise to you for the conduct that has come to light. Today, the Prime Minister will be forced to say whether he attended that party or not. His answer will define his career from this point, and it will have repercussions he won't be able to control. MPs are frustrated, angry, upset. Can he win them and the country around? Kate McCann, Sky News.
Joined now by Peter Cardwell, a former special advisor to Theresa May and Boris Johnson. Hello to you, Mr. Cardwell. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. What will be happening at Downing Street this morning?
Panic, worry, and a desperate attempt to try to get this over with. Prime Minister's questions today, Keir Starmer only needs to ask the same question 6 times. Prime Minister, did you attend the party on the 20th of May 2020? Yes or no? That's all he needs to ask. And Boris Johnson must give an answer, because the senior civil servant, Sue Gray, who's looking into this inquiry, the line so far has been to hide behind that, to say to wait for the inquiry. But everybody, the newspapers, and not just the national newspapers, regional newspapers as well, people up and down the country, people who made sacrifices during COVID, asking that simple question, did you attend the party or not? Did you break the rules or not, Prime Minister? And he has to have an answer for that at 12 o'clock today.
What could his defence be?
I'm not sure there is a defence. If he says yes, then it would appear that he broke the rules and that he lied. If he says no, well, there are lots of eyewitnesses who say he was there. So, I mean, Boris Johnson is someone who has made a career of getting out of sticky situations. Whether he can get out of this one or not, I think remains to be seen. And I think a lot of people, look at those backbenches yesterday behind Michael Ellis, the Paymaster General, who was sent out on a real hospital pass to defend the Prime Minister. It'll be fascinating to see how many Conservative MPs are behind the Prime Minister today, both figuratively and literally on those green benches. And I'm not sure there'll be that many, to be honest.
If you were working for him, how would you start to defend him?
I would say that you've got to get everything in the public domain as soon as possible. I think they've waited too long. I think he should have come out yesterday and done a very tough interview with a very tough interviewer like UK and said everything about the party, made a full and abject apology for what he did, to say that he would cooperate with any inquiry, whether that's a police inquiry or a civil service inquiry or whatever inquiry, to get all the details in the public domain. I think that's all you can do. This is just going to rumble on. This is not going to go away. Boris Johnson cannot dodge this one. He's got to give answers, whether it'll be at Prime Minister's questions today, whether it'll be in the inquiry. But even with the inquiry, I think people are asking, why can you answer a simple, straightforward question to this senior civil servant, to Sue Gray, but you can't just level with the country? So I think with any scandal like this, the thing is that, okay, it's an easy one to understand. Things like Greensill, for example, the David Cameron scandal, that was a bit complicated. Who was who sent WhatsApps to who? This is really, really straightforward. Everybody made sacrifices. I know I had an elderly aunt. There were 14 of us at our funeral. Many, many people up and down the country watching your programme this morning will have very, very similar sacrifices they made. And this is very easy to understand, a lot of anger there. And when you have so many Conservative MPs who are not backing the Prime Minister, where are his cabinet colleagues? Where's the Minister on the morning round of interviews this morning? They're not sending people out to defend this, but the Prime Minister has questions to answer. He must answer them, and answer them quickly if he has any chance of surviving.
Rather than coming clean, I mean, we're being told this morning that Downing Street staff are being told to wipe information relating to the events of any parties at Downing Street during lockdown from their phones and other devices. If they do that, does that not mean that they are complicit?
Well, it would, and they absolutely should not be doing that. I know from Downing Street staff that I've been speaking to, friends of mine, that they are as outraged as the country. There are certainly some people who attended this party, but the ones I've been speaking to who certainly weren't at the party, there's just anger, there's frustration, there's a real desire that this is in some way dealt with. If anybody's deleting any information, that is very unethical and possibly criminal, and they absolutely shouldn't be doing that.
The Prime Minister has, you know, he's Teflon, isn't he? Things like this have happened to him before, perhaps not to this degree. And he just seems to be able to be a bit Boris-like about it and shrug it off. Will he be able to do it this time, or is the game over?
You can never underestimate Boris Johnson. I remember when I was in government for 3.5 years, he'd resigned as Foreign Secretary. He was holed up in his Portcullis House office in Parliament with 1 or 2 aides, and everybody thought, you know, it's over for Boris. He's a busted flush. Then he emerges triumphant as Prime Minister. He is the comeback kid. He was sacked twice, once in politics, once in journalism, and he came back from that and is now the most powerful person in the country. So never underestimate Boris Johnson, but at the same time, it's difficult to see how anybody, any politician, would get out of this one. But I think the vultures are circling, but there's no clear, there's nobody sticking sticking the knife in really just yet. There are, of course, Keir Starmer has accused him of lying. Sir Ed Davey this morning is saying he should resign. But in his own party, I don't think there are those people who say that he is a liability just yet, although the polling would certainly indicate that that appears to be the case. And I think once you get many people on his own party saying that he's a liability and calling for him to go, perhaps letters going at Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, that's the real danger point, but we're not there just yet.
OK, it's good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Prime Minister's questions, of course, at midday today. The Prime Minister will be turning up for that, I am sure. Before that, although we've got no minister, we've got Alastair Campbell coming up. I'm sure he'll have quite a few things to say. Angela Rayner as well for Labour. Will she be facing the Prime Minister today, or will her leader be back at work again, having contracted COVID for the second time? Tobias Ellwood, the chairman of the Defence Committee, he will also be with us this morning as well. And just looking through my notes, well, I don't want to spoil it for you, but we've got one or two other Conservatives as well, including Hugh Merriman, chair of the Transport Select Committee, our political correspondent Tamara Cohen. Not with me here in the studio this morning, rather at Downing Street. Hello to you, Tamara. Busted flush or the comeback kid?
Hi, Kay. Well, I think for the first time, the real question many Tory MPs are asking is how on earth does Boris Johnson wriggle out of this one? We heard nothing from him yesterday. The first we will hear from him is today at Prime Minister's questions. I understand there won't be any kind of formal statement before that, but he may say a few words before Keir Starmer gets stuck in with those questions, which are all going to be, did he attend the party and what did he know of the organising of that party? And Tory MPs are really going to be hanging on what that explanation is, and if it includes a full and grovelling apology for what many of them think has been a deep and damaging episode. And it's not just Tory MPs. They know the public are starting to tire of this too. We did a YouGov poll for Sky News yesterday, and this is what it showed. Do you think Boris Johnson should resign from his role as Prime Minister? 56% of those questions said he should. 27% said he should remain in the role, and 17% said don't know. So the jury's very much out. We've already had a couple of Tory MPs saying that this is a resigning issue, and others are waiting to see how the public reaction pans out over the next few weeks, and especially what the findings of that civil service inquiry are as to whether he broke the guidance or misled MPs when he said it had been followed. Yes, it's survivable in the view of some ministers, but a lot will hang on what Boris Johnson says today.
OK, Tamara, thanks. Tamara's take, of course, at 9 o'clock this morning. What do you think? That was the YouGov poll that we carried out on your behalf yesterday. Do you think that the Prime Minister should step down, given what we have been hearing of events in May of 2020, when the streets were empty in your town because we were under severe lockdown? Have you got a thought on that? Benedict and Fergus are standing by. If you would like to tweet me and let me know your thoughts at Kay Burley, we'll share that with the rest of the world throughout the course of the programme today. As I said, no minister today. Edward Arger, the health minister, put his big boy pants on yesterday and came to answer some questions about that party at Downing Street. He, along with others that we have spoken to, hid behind Sue Gray. She is the woman that is carrying out the investigation into what happened at Downing Street. 15 times he talked about Sue Gray.
It's absolutely right that Sue Gray, a very senior, very well-respected civil servant, is independently looking into these. That's why it's right that this is looked into independently by Sue Gray, and it's right that Sue Gray is looking into this matter independently. I have to repeat it because it's the right thing to do, is that's up to Ms Gray to look into. It's important that Ms Gray, as an independent figure, an independent civil servant, looks into this. They're being investigated by Sue Gray. I'm going to let Sue Gray get on with her job. I'm not going to prejudge what Sue Gray will find happened on that occasion. What actually happened or didn't happen in Downing Street is a matter for Ms Gray, and that's what Sue Gray is going to be looking at. I'm not going to prejudge what Sue Gray will find happened on that occasion. I'm not going to give a commentary on what Ms Gray may or may not conclude.
15 times in total. That was just a flavour. And the party's fallout is dominating the newspapers this morning, starting with the Telegraph reporting that Boris Johnson is losing support from within his own party as the shadow of the alleged Downing Street parties haunt number 10. It's always interesting when you see a story about Boris Johnson on the front of the Telegraph. They tend to try to dodge it when they can. Usually a supporter of Boris Johnson, you know, it's serious when he's on the front page. The Eye says the PM's future is in jeopardy as Conservatives hit out at the government. That's what the Eye is saying this morning. The FT, Johnson faces potentially terminal showdown over Downing Street parties, is on the front of the Financial Times. The Guardian says MPs are urging the Prime Minister to come clean over whether or not he attended the party. And the Metro suggests the Prime Minister has contempt for the victims. If you've got time to look at page 5 of The Guardian this morning, I actually ripped it out of the paper so I can refer to it from time to time today. And they list from the 1st of December down to the 20th of December the number of times that the Prime Minister said he was not involved with any parties at number 10. Still to come, talking to, amongst other people, Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner about where those allegations leave the Prime Minister. Later this hour, I'll be speaking to the former Director of Comms at number 10 under Tony Blair. That was Alastair Campbell, about the alleged parties at number 10 during lockdown. Also, I'm going to be joined by the Conservative MP and Chair of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood, to get his view on those Downing Street parties, as well as the tensions on the Russian-Ukrainian border. And later in the programme, I'm going to be speaking to the SNP's Westminster leader, that's Ian Blackford, of course, who's already called for the PM to resign. And Boris Johnson will come under more scrutiny in the House of Commons, of course, this afternoon. There will be full and live coverage of Prime Minister's questions here on Sky News at midday. Meantime, the tennis star Novak Djokovic has apologised for what he calls an administrative mistake on his travel declaration. His team gave incorrect information about whether he had travelled to any third countries before flying to Australia. Still waiting to find out if he will be allowed to stay. In a statement, Djokovic said, "On the issue of my travel declaration, this was submitted by my support team on my behalf, as I told immigration officials on my arrival, and my agent sincerely apologises for the administrative mistake in ticking the incorrect box about my previous travel before coming to Australia." This is what his mum said.
I'm very worried, so I realize that this is not over yet, and we are all praying that he will stay and he will play. So I hope so that everybody is thinking the same. I hope the minister, the government and the minister is thinking on the other. I mean, don't let him out. Don't throw him out. He is a tennis player. He's not politician. He is not a criminal. He is not murderer. He is just tennis player, the best in the world. Just let him play.
Nicole's been in Melbourne for us all week, joins us again now. Aussie Open is due to start on Monday, of course. Nicole, good morning, good afternoon where you are. Is he going to be playing or not?
Well, we don't know. That's the million-dollar question that we're waiting to find out from the immigration minister. He's indicated that the delay has taken place because of this issue over the travel declaration form that you just talked about. The problem there was Novak Djokovic said that in the 2 weeks before arriving in Australia, he hadn't been in any other country, but it turns out he had been in Spain. All of these controversies have forced him to give a lengthy explanation on Instagram. The other issue he had to address were photos that came out of him in public settings after he had had a COVID positive test on the 16th of December. Now, he has admitted that 2 days after that, he had a media interview and a photo shoot after having a positive COVID PCR test. He knew he was positive. He said it was an error of judgment, but it's something that won't play well with the Australian authorities and the public here. Many people have been upset to find out that Novak Djokovic was entering the country without being double vaccinated. Some of that sentiment has changed, though, because people were also outraged to find out that he had been put in an immigration detention hotel in Melbourne. But right now it's still a waiting game. The minister involved in this has said that he's received more submissions and legal documents from Novak Djokovic's team. But as for whether he'll appear on Monday, we're still waiting to hear.
OK, Nicole, for now, thank you. Well, the government has suspended the rollout of smart motorways until at least 2025 because of concerns about their safer. Smart motorways were designed to increase road capacity by converting the existing hard shoulder to a live lane. But that means there is less space for broken down vehicles to stop safely. Aisha has this.
More than 2 years ago, Jason Mercer was killed on his drive to work. He'd had a minor collision with a van on a stretch of the M1 converted into a smart motorway. Moments after the drivers stopped, they were hit by a lorry. Mr. Mercer's wife believes he would still be alive if the hard shoulder hadn't been taken away.
At first, I thought it was just a tragic accident, but the more and more I learned that it never should have happened and it didn't need to happen. Other people had had it happen to them, and the campaigners had been shouting about smart motorways for years and years and years. It just made it so much more painful.
There are 3 types of smart motorway, all intended to keep traffic moving, but they've sparked safety concerns. Following a government inquiry, the rollout has been paused for those where the hard shoulder is permanently a live traffic lane. Where work has been completed or is underway, a retrofit programme will see more refuge areas and stop vehicle detection technology installed.
We think it is right that the government takes stock, looks at the evidence, looks at all the data and collects all the data before making a decision as to whether or not it is right to proceed. Ultimately, it is the permanent removal of the hard shoulder and insufficient emergency refuge areas that is the problem. And, if a driver stops in a live lane, then potentially they can be at mercy of drivers behind them, not following some of the information on the gantry signs themselves.
With estimates that dozens like Jason have lost their lives on these roads, this pause will ultimately allow the government to evaluate just how smart these motorways really are. Aisha Zahid, Sky News.
Latest business figures are out for the last financial quarter of 2021. Sainsbury's has reported stronger than expected grocery sales in the 6 weeks leading to the 8th of January. Let's get more on that, should we? Enda is standing by for us in West London. Hello to you, Enda. So Sainsbury's have done better than expected.
Yeah, they have, Kay. Good morning to you. It's a big day, really, for lots of famous names on the high street. They're all reporting their last quarter results, which, of course, include Christmas. Sainsbury's first out of the block this morning, so they are on track for full-year profits before tax of £720 million. Mixed bag, really. General merchandise down 16% year-on-year for the last quarter. Grocery sales down 1.1%. Clothing up 38%. And the chief exec, Simon Roberts, this morning revealing that they're investing £100 million now in the coming weeks into bringing everyone up to at least £10 an hour from March. So we'll have more results throughout the morning as we get them.
OK, for now, thanks so much indeed. Thanks a lot. Latest figures there from Sainsbury's doing better than expected. What's your experience? I went to the supermarket yesterday. Shelves are empty. Is that because so many people are off with Omicron, or is that because they can't get the deliveries because there aren't enough lorry drivers? I don't know. Let me know your experience at Kay Burley. As I said, Fergus and Benedict waiting to hear from you if you'd like to tweet me directly. Have a look at what we found in the papers for you this morning. An incredible escape from disaster. A medical helicopter crashed in Philadelphia in the United States, but the 4 people on board, including a young child, they all survived, which is absolutely amazing. Good for them. The aircraft managed to avoid power cables and buildings before landing near a church outside Philadelphia yesterday. Read into that what you might. It was transporting the infant to a hospital before it crashed in transit. Emergency responders say they're thankful all involved were unhurt.
We're blessed. We're blessed as a community. We're blessed as a fire service, police department, and emergency management. We are totally blessed.
It's a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. Here, what you see behind you, how this, and there's no debris, no wires down, no trees, how that pilot was able to get that plane there, and all 4 of them were able to get themselves out of the helicopter with assistance from the police and the fire department when we responded.
For weeks, there's been a desperate shortage of COVID lateral flow tests for people to use at home. Now, Sky News has been given exclusive access to a warehouse where millions and millions and millions of tests are just sitting there, waiting for distribution. The problem has been getting official approval. Now that's done, they should be arriving in pharmacies. Becky Johnson reports.
Stacked to the ceiling, row upon row of boxes packed full of lateral flow tests, ready and waiting at this warehouse in Nottinghamshire to be distributed to pharmacies across the country. Each individual box has almost 400 tests. In fact, at this warehouse alone, there are tens of millions of tests all packed up, ready to go. It means while the country faced a shortage of lateral flow kits, these were sitting ready to use. The first rapid tests manufactured in the UK to be approved for self-use in homes here. But it took Derby-based company SureScreen around 6 months to get that approval. Has that been frustrating, the length of time it's taken, especially in recent weeks when you've seen the desperate need for lateral flow tests in the country?
Well, we just focus on making the best tests we can, and we're very aware of why regulations are in place.
For several weeks, they've been loading lorries with tests bound for national distribution centres, but they've only appeared on pharmacy shelves in the last few days. Too late for those who've had to deal with the national shortage.
It has been a very difficult time for pharmacies in that for weeks we have been highlighting that the demand is very, very high for lateral flow tests. However, the supply is not matching the demand. And we're still in the same situation that many pharmacies are receiving very little, and some pharmacies actually don't get anything really.
A spokesperson for the UK Health Security Agency said extensive evaluation is carried out on tests designed for home use to ensure they're reliable and accurate. Evaluation of this data is part of the regulatory approval process, which can take time. They're able to produce around 1 million tests a day here and already export them to over 50 countries. Some will question why it took so long for them to be approved for home use here. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Nottinghamshire.
We're looking at the latest COVID data for you in the UK. 120,821 new cases of coronavirus reported in the last 24 hours, 379 more deaths, the highest since February of last year. Takes the number of those who've died within 28 days of a positive COVID test to 150,609 people. Looking at some of today's other headlines for you now. Parents have been warned about a winter virus that can cause breathing problems in very young children. The British Lung Foundation says respiratory syncytial, virus could surge next winter because children have a much lower immunity following last winter's COVID lockdown. Almost 600 former teachers have come forward to support schools struggling with staff shortages due to the pandemic, according to the Department for Education. It says another 100 have expressed interest. Sky News has learned that a sexual predator was caught only after investigators at the FBI contacted the UK's National Crime Agency, despite more than a dozen of his victims reporting him to British police. Last month, 26-year-old Abdul Ilahi was jailed for 32 years after pleading guilty to 158 offences, including blackmailing victims to abuse themselves, their siblings and children. Now, a song that many of us will recognise is Here to Stay No More. Elvis Costello has revealed he will no longer perform his biggest hit, Oliver's Army, and has also asked radio stations to stop playing the song. Written about the conflict in Northern Ireland, the lyrics contain a racial slur used to describe Irish Catholics. He told the Daily Telegraph that he has been accused of something that I didn't intend in relation to the use of the slur. Oliver's Army no more. Now, if you've been brought to tears when chopping an onion, here's some good news for you. Apparently, tearless onions are to go on sale in British supermarkets for the first time. The so-called Sonions are not genetically modified, but the product of decades of crossbreeding less pungent strains of the staple vegetable. The new variety is being billed as a game changer for red-eyed chefs. What do you do to stop from crying when you cut onions? I put my glasses on. Easy, huh? Quick look at the weather.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
High pressure means the rest of the week will be mainly settled with an increasing risk of fog and frost. The south will start frosty today with some dense fog patches, especially for central England, but the north looks milder.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
How about this for a courageous creature? Here we go. This is Magawa. You remember Magawa? We've focused on Magawa before. Hero landmine sweeping rat. Sadly, now died at the age of 8. In 2020, became the first rat to be awarded the PDSA Gold Medal, the animal equivalent of the George Cross, which recognises acts of heroism by British citizens and military personnel. In his lifetime, he cleared more than 225,000 square metres of land, the equivalent of about 31 football pitches, and discovered 71 landmines in Cambodia. May he rest in peace. Looking at some of the pictures in the papers for you this morning. Here we go. This is what caught our eye. Showing a picture from May of 2020, important date, isn't it? That encapsulates so much of the uproar around the latest Downing Street party allegation. 2 people outdoors and distanced from one another, appearing to be confronted by a police officer on a beach. Moving on from that particular story, The Times shows Akia Henry and Michael Balogun in costume for the upcoming Royal Shakespeare Company production of Much Ado About Nothing. I love this picture. Set in a futuristic world and debuts in Stratford-upon-Avon at the beginning of February. And here's an early contender for Photo of the Year. The Express report on a wild cougar who's been living an urban life on the west coast of America. There she is. The mountain lion, known as P22, has been seen hunting deer in Forest Lawn and drinking from Lake Hollywood, 2 well-known celebrity hotspots. Love that picture as well. How long did it take them to get that perfectly right? And Heidi Klum, love this picture as well, in the Mail. How amazing does she look? Far from mellow yellow. She's 48. She said on Instagram that the Peter Dundas number is her favourite frock. I'm sure that a lot of people agree with her on that one. And finally, ladies, here's Richard Hammond and gentlemen away from the wheel. Here he is facing up to his trauma and getting inside the car that very nearly killed him. Can you believe that was 16 years ago he crashed while travelling at an astonishing 319 miles an hour at the time. You can see he looks pretty anxious and traumatised. Here's the picture of when it happened. Do you remember they thought if it hadn't been for the roll bar, he would most certainly have lost his life. Took him a long time to recover, faced his demons, got back in the car a couple of days ago. Coming up, joined by the former director of comms at Number 10 under Tony Blair. That was Alastair Campbell, on what the Downing Street party scandal means for the PM. Hello again, everybody. You'll be tuning in about this time, won't you, to find out what the Minister had to say about the Prime Minister's party. None forthcoming this morning, sadly. Don't know why. We know that they do watch in Downing Street, so we've got until 10 o'clock, 2.5 hours. Very happy to chat to whoever. It's always best to come clean, isn't it? Now, Boris Johnson's going to be appearing before MPs at PMQs today. He's expected to be asked to confirm whether he attended a drinks party at Downing Street during lockdown in May of 2020. The invite was sent out by his PPS, Private Secretary. The government announces a pause in its rollout of smart motorways after safety concerns. And Novak Djokovic has apologised for what he calls an admin mistake on his travel declaration to enter Australia as the tennis star awaits his fate. Just to remember, of course, as well, that from midday today, it's going to be Prime Minister's question time, and we will be hearing from the Prime Minister for the first time since these latest allegations of events at Downing Street came out. So we'll find out what he has to say. No Minister this morning, but we do have Alastair Campbell, who is the former Director of Communications at Number 10 under Tony Blair. Now, I know that you're going to say he's got to step down. First of all, though, can I ask you what you would be doing to try to protect his reputation if you were representing him today?
Well, I think he's trashed his own reputation over many, many years. And I think what we're seeing today is the inevitable consequence of having elected somebody like Boris Johnson as Prime Minister in the first place. It's not as if the country didn't have lots of warnings about the sort of person he was, the sort of person he is, and the way that he conducts himself in public and private life. And I don't know what I would say to him, to be absolutely frank, because one, I wouldn't be there. But secondly, I think that I have the sense that there's now a culture in there that basically says Johnson thinks he can do what the hell he wants, and that has now spread to other people as well. So I honestly don't know, Kate. You're asking. I know you've got to fill the time because you've got no Tory ministers on, and I can't pretend that I'm going to stand in for them. But I honestly don't know what I would say to him, other than, as you said earlier, it is better to stand there at the dispatch box and tell the truth. But the problem, if he stands up and tells the truth, is that, which would be, a pretty rare thing of itself. But the problem with that is that then he's probably and almost certainly going to have to admit that he broke the laws that he brought in and that he told the entire country we had to live by, and the vast majority of people did, at in so many cases, at enormous sacrifice. And that is why this has become such a toxic, sulphurous issue for him.
I'm trying to be even-handed, though, Alastair, and I know, and my viewers know, that you are very good at advice. You did it incredibly well for a long time while you were at number 10. Give it a go. What would you say to him to try to get him off the hook?
As you said it, fess up, be honest. And if it comes, now that is difficult, because the truth is, as I say, we're talking now about breaches of the law. We're just talking about messing about and some of the stuff that politicians sometimes get up to. We're talking about a breach of the law at an incredibly difficult point. But I think that it's always best in these circumstances, because the other thing that's happening now is because within I still know a lot of people inside the civil service. I know people who are leaving at the moment because they can't stand what's going on. But what happens when you have somebody at the top who is basically saying, I can do what I want, I will blame other people, I will throw other people under the bus? That's when people in your profession then get all the calls and the leaks and all the rest of it. That is going to continue and continue and continue until this guy actually stands up and starts operating by basic public standards that most of the public expect him to, one of which is you level with people. So stop lying, stop blustering, stop pretending that you haven't done anything wrong, and instead admit it, accept anything that comes your way with that, apologise to the country, and then try to operate in a different way. But I don't think he's capable of doing it. I really don't.
We did a YouGov poll on Sky yesterday, a snap poll, to find out what people thought, and this is what it looks like. 27% of people, so almost more than a quarter of those that we asked, still felt that he should remain as Prime Minister, even if he did break the rules.
Well, it doesn't actually say that. It just says, do you think Boris Johnson should resign from his role as Prime Minister? Whether that number would change if it was proven that he had broken lockdown rules, I don't know. But listen, that is not a good position to be in. You're talking
That's why you're so good at what you do, Alastair, because you immediately extrapolated something different from what I was just illustrating.
No, but I think for any Prime Minister to have a situation where fewer than a third of people think you should still be doing the job. You've got to remember, Kate, most of the time, most people just kind of get on with their lives, and politics is something happening over there. And you give them a poll. I'm not a great fan of instant polls. I'll be absolutely honest about that, because they just tend to reflect a passing mood. But the fact is, as a country, we've just got to decide whether we think that the situation that we've had over the last couple of years is tolerable and tenable. And the other thing I think that's really important to draw out of this isn't just about Boris Johnson. These Conservatives have now been in power for over a decade. And if it's true, by the way, and it's interesting you can't get a minister to come on this morning, but if it's true that yesterday at the cabinet meeting, this is something your colleagues have been saying, that this wasn't even raised by a single member of the cabinet, then they really are an utterly spineless, craven bunch. This is something that is affecting the good governance of the country, and that is something for the entire cabinet to address.
What do you think about what's been happening as far as the Met is concerned? We know, of course, that while Tony Blair was Prime Minister, he was questioned under caution about something different, but nevertheless, they came forward and wanted to talk to the then Prime Minister. Should they be talking to this one?
Well, it's a very interesting comparison, and I do think, whether it's the way that the media have covered this, whether it's the way that the political system and Parliament have covered this, if you go back to that case that you mentioned relating to Tony Blair, that was an investigation mounted on the basis of a single claim by a single SNP MP. And on that basis, the police got involved. And as you say, they got sending Yates of the Yard trampling all over Downing Street and all the rest of it. We have a situation in relation to the breaches of lockdown regulations or laws where there is plenty of evidence that you'd have thought was worth investigating. And at every step of this way, the Met's line has been, we don't have evidence. We don't have evidence to investigate. Well, your job is meant to be to find evidence when you think that there may have been breaches of the law. Now, we heard yesterday the Metropolitan Police are in contact with the Cabinet Office. I don't know what that means. But at the time, let me tell you, there were two things going on at the time of this party was happening. One is the police were arresting and cautioning people who were gathering in groups of more than two outside, in several hundred, I think it was at the time. And the second thing to say is that the day after this party, Boris Johnson was out clapping on the steps of Number 10. I mean, the hypocrisy is what gets me in this as well. And yes, I do think the police have got to... You cannot have a situation where people think that the police is just an arm of government. And you've had the sense with the Met that they've been bending over backwards to try not to get involved in this. If a crime has been committed in the garden of Downing Street or anywhere else in Downing Street, and bear in mind, this is a place that's probably got more CCTV over it than any other building in the country. So don't tell me the police don't know what's been going on.
OK, it's good to talk to you. Thanks. I'm trying not to take it personal every time you have a pop at the media on Twitter, by the way. It's good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Angela Rayner, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, with us very shortly. No government minister today. Still time. Before that, though, from April, frontline NHS staff in England will need to have the COVID jab or will be moved to another role. The move has sparked worry among hospital bosses who fear they'll lose staff when the new rules come in. Let's talk to Dr. Phui Mi Kwek, part-time GP, doesn't want the vaccine. Hello to you, Doctor. Thanks for joining us. Why not?
Hello. Hi, Kay. There are various reasons, but I just made this decision that it's not like the hepatitis B vaccine, which is what I was told. I mean, that particular vaccine has a proven safety record and has, it gives immunity for a long time, gives protection for a long time. Whereas the COVID vaccine, it was new, there was no long-term safety data. So just being cautious, I just wanted to wait. And also I did get COVID. So I felt my immunity was pretty good anyway. But what happened was, the reason I wrote to Boris was
just because you've had COVID doesn't mean you won't get it again, does it? And you won't give it to anybody else.
That's true. And even if you've had the vaccination, it doesn't mean you won't get COVID either.
But the symptoms are likely to be not as bad, is what we're told. Are you disagreeing with that? Oh, is that the end of that? Oh. I think it might be. OK, well, I'm pleased to say that despite that, I can wander over, guys, and let's bring in Angela Rayner, who's standing by for us. We weren't expecting that, so I need to move the furniture around a little bit. Miss Rayner, if you'll bear with me. There we go. How are you?
You're doing great furniture removal as well.
I'm going to run around with a duster in a bit. It's nice to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning. No minister this morning. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's shameful that Boris Johnson over the last couple of days hasn't answered the central question as yes or no. Was you at a party at 10 Downing Street when everyone else was in lockdown? He could have cleared this up within the last couple of days. I took the question yesterday, the urgent question. He still didn't turn up to Parliament. His ministers didn't turn up to Parliament, bar the unlucky one that got the short straw. And he's still not answered that question. So I think it's not unsurprising that no one had turned up today to answer to it because, quite frankly, to anyone who lost a loved one, who was not able to visit them and see them in their dying hours, it's pretty despicable to find that they were partying at number 10.
He will turn up today because it's Prime Minister's questions, of course. If he doesn't, then that's a whole new can of worms, isn't it? Will you be asking the questions?
I don't know yet. It depends on Keir's test results this morning.
When's he having those?
I think he's having it this morning. I've been on the media round, so I'm not sure. He did test negative yesterday, so if he tests negative this morning, then he should be fine, yeah.
Then he can.
But you know Keir Starmer's luck, so I'm not taking anything for granted.
He's had COVID, what, 76,000 times now, hasn't he?
He's had a pretty bad run of it,
yeah,
to be
well,
honest.
we wish him better, and it was
you.
Negative yesterday. So
it was, so hopefully he'll be there this afternoon.
And he's had a week to think about what he's going to ask the Prime Minister. What do you think his first question will be?
I think he'll be as frustrated as the public are regarding what the Prime Minister's done. Nobody wants to be in this circumstance when we're at a time of crisis. You know, the country are facing a cost of living crisis. There's other things that people are rightly concerned about at the moment. But quite rightly, those that are still grieving, those that remember those dark days of having those restrictions will be pretty cheesed off and upset that they see the Prime Minister has actually attended a party in Downing Street when he's clearly broken the rules and the law. That's not what we expect. And that's regardless of political persuasions. Even Conservatives will say that is not what you expect from the Prime Minister of this country.
That was then, some might say. This is now. And the Conservatives have managed to steer us through a global pandemic.
Well, if you look at our death rates, they have been pretty shocking. We've seen that the waste in terms of public procurement contracts, and so therefore, whilst there has been, you know, the vaccination programme that the NHS worked on and our great scientists in the UK was a great success and continues to be a success, there are failings that the government have shown throughout the pandemic. But this is the number one critical one for me, is that the Prime Minister, the allegation is that he's lied and he's broke the rules and broke the law, and that is the most serious allegation you can put to a Prime Minister at a time of crisis.
We had a YouGov poll, snap poll yesterday, and still 26% of people feel that the Prime Minister shouldn't resign. That's a reflection on your party as much as anything.
I think, you know, people are entitled to their opinions. People are concerned at the moment. They just want to see things improve for their lives, and I completely understand that. But many of the public now, I mean, it won't come as a shock to people that I don't think Boris Johnson was the right Prime Minister for this country, but I think the general population now and the British public feel that they've been lied to, deceived to, and are feeling pretty angry and upset. And those that have lost loved ones and were not able to be there in those dying hours feel that the Prime Minister has really let them down on a level that they never expected any Prime Minister of this country to do.
Yeah, you only have one vote, though, and the majority felt that Jeremy Corbyn was certainly not the right Prime Minister. Did the party put up the wrong person against him?
Well, you know, in 2019, we lost the general election and lost it very badly, and we've had to reflect on that. And since I became deputy leader of the Labour Party and Keir became leader, we've been doing a job of making sure that the public can see that we acknowledge where we were and that we take those issues forward. That's why this week, only yesterday, we were in the House of Commons trying to get the government to relieve the pressures on working families around the energy crisis that we face at the moment. So really trying to show the public that we're on their side. And I think that's starting to cut through, and you know, we had to acknowledge that. But the actual, you know, what people have seen from this Prime Minister over the last 12 months, and certainly in the last couple of days, where he hasn't even had the decency to answer a very simple question: was you at a party at your flat during lockdown when people were told not to or not? I think shows the level of the man, really, that he hasn't been able to come forward and say that.
He's a very busy man. Perhaps it was on his other phone.
He wasn't very busy yesterday. It's an urgent question. He's a parliamentarian.
He didn't know what he was doing on the 20th of May.
Well, I think the general public will make their assumptions. I mean, we all saw his media appearance where he was actually smirking when he was asked the question. I think the British public...
That's an unfortunate mannerism that he has when he's under pressure. I don't necessarily... I think, you know, and I'm not the first... I'm certainly not defending Boris Johnson, but that's what he does when he's under pressure, like a naughty schoolboy.
He had the opportunity yesterday through the urgent question, through Parliament, to come to the House and to tell the British public whether he was partying or not when everybody else was in lockdown.
What if he didn't remember?
Well, he should remember. I mean, I think he'd find it pretty hard not to remember whether he was at a lockdown party or not. I certainly didn't have any lockdown parties and didn't attend any. It doesn't take me to look at my diary to see whether or not I was at one or not on that day.
But you're not
I know for a fact I was.
I mean, look how busy he is.
Well, we all were, but I think we all know whether or not we broke lockdown rules.
As far as he is concerned, if he did, are you more concerned that he went to the party, or are you more concerned that he misled Parliament?
I think, you know, the frustration is not only is it around the fact that he shouldn't have been breaking the law and breaking the rules and he should come to the House and speak to the British people as quickly as possible about that, but it's the fact that for time and time again now he said that nothing happened, no rules were broken, and the allegation centrally now is that he was actually attending this party during lockdown. So it shows that he's not only broke the rules, but he's lied to the British public, and I think that makes his position completely untenable.
So you're calling for him to resign?
I think it wouldn't be a surprise that I think he should go, but I think more crucially now is members of Parliament, his Conservative MPs, have to ask themselves the question is why are we propping up this man who has lied to the British public and who has broke the rules and broke the law?
The fact is they are, though. They're still supporting him.
Well, we'll see what happens today. And we'll see what Boris Johnson has to say for himself. But anyone who props up a liar who breaks the law, to me, is, you know, that's a completely unacceptable position.
So what are you suggesting might happen today? Because we have been speaking to other colleagues, other peers earlier today, and they were suggesting that fewer backbenchers might be behind him today.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he could pick up the phone straight away. He could speak to you on your show and he could clear it up. He could clear it up very quickly.
Absolutely, Mr Johnson. And honestly, I can clear the schedule for you. If you're watching this morning, I know you do watch in Downing Street. As you heard from Ms Rayner, there's room on the sofa for you as well. Just come along and talk to us. It's best to come clean.
It is. And you know, it's the British public that he needs to come clean to. You know, they're the people that have sacrificed so much. Our NHS workers, our key workers who have provided care and, you know, they've sacrificed not seeing their loved ones, and they're all upset at the moment. They want to know, Boris Johnson, did you have a party in Downing Street when everybody else was in lockdown, yes or no? He has to answer that question today.
And if he admits to it and comes clean and says he's sorry and he apologises, don't we just move on then?
I don't think we can on this, to be honest. And I think the last couple of days have shown that the fact that he's been lying about it and not telling the public the truth as well really undermines his position as Prime Minister. You can't break the law.
So it's not about what he did, it's about the fact that he didn't come clean.
I think it's both. I think it's harmful on both accounts. I think what he did shows that when people were not seeing their loved ones who were dying and in critical care, they're really devastated. They're still grieving about that process that they went through. And the Prime Minister at the time was partying. I mean, that in itself is bad enough. But then to try and not tell the public the truth and come clean about that, I think that just adds insult to injury.
But many members of the public will say he stood by us during lockdown. He made sure that there was enough money during the furlough scheme that we could continue on feeding our families. He's tried to support us as far as energy prices are concerned. Well, let's wait and see what happens as far as April is concerned. And on balance, he is a good Prime Minister.
We've had one of the highest death tolls. You know, COVID has been very disastrous for the UK. And, you know, I pay tribute to those in our NHS, those scientists that helped us with the vaccination process. We haven't had the inquiry results into what happened. We know billions of pounds were wasted on PPE contracts and contracts that we couldn't use. And the Prime Minister now is the central allegation is he's lied to the British public and he's had parties during the lockdown. I think that's a pretty damning and serious position for the Prime Minister to be in.
Talk to me about the role of the police.
Well, if the law was broken, the police have an obligation to investigate that, and I think they should do that. But like I say, this could be cleared up very quickly by Boris Johnson. Yes or no, did you have a party when you shouldn't? He knows that. He's the Prime Minister of the country.
But what should the police be doing? They did previously, I was talking to Alastair Campbell a few moments ago, and they did question Tony Blair under caution when he was Prime Minister.
Well, the police have to uphold the law. You know, they have an obligation to the British public. You know, we police in this country by consent. If the law was broken, they have an obligation to investigate that. But like I say, you know, the Prime Minister...
They can only know if the law's been broken if they investigate, and up until now they haven't.
Yeah, and, you know, I've said that any findings that Sue Gray has into her investigation should be handed over to the police for them to look at that. But very crucial, like I say, I think it's not about what the police have done. It's about Boris Johnson is the Prime Minister of the country. He set those laws in the first place. He can very simply answer the question, did you break the law or not?
OK, we've got a picture that's just reaching us, actually. I think this is the Prime Minister this morning in his vehicle. There we go. Can't really see him, can we? But I know that that is the PM's car. He is due to be at Downing Street shortly, and then at the House of Commons by midday today for Prime Minister's questions. Let's see if he attends. I'm sure that he will. He is the Prime Minister of this country, of course. For how much longer, don't know. If not him, then who are you most concerned about facing opposite the dispatch box next time your boss gets COVID?
Well, we'll have to see what happens today. I'm not concerned about facing any of them. My job is to be the official opposition, and I'll continue to do that and hold the government to account, whoever it is. You know, his cabinet are just as responsible as he is, and every Tory MP that props him up at the moment are just as culpable for allowing him to continue in his role.
Are you confident that he'll turn up today?
He should do, but, you know, you never know. He could have been... he could get a lateral flow test that tests positive or not, but he doesn't have to attend Parliament to tell people whether or not he attended that party or not. He should have done that immediately. He's had many opportunities over the last couple of days to do that. He's failed to do it, and I think he should come clean as quickly as possible.
Good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to join us. Thank you. Always looks so cool, doesn't she? Thanks a lot.
I love your dress.
Thanks a lot. Bear with me just a second, if you would, please, Ms. Rayner. I just want to tell you what the newspapers are doing this morning. Here we go. And this is the Telegraph. Reporting that Boris Johnson is losing support from within his own party as the shadow of the alleged Downing Street parties haunts Number 10. The Eye says the PM's future is in jeopardy as Conservatives hit out at the government. Johnson faces potentially terminal showdown over Downing Street parties is on the front of the FT this morning. The Guardian says MPs are urging the Prime Minister to come clean over whether or not he attended the party. And the Metro suggests the Prime Minister has contempt for his victims. That's the front of the Metro today.